probably one of the best quarterfinals I think I've ever seen at a Rugby World Cup. And that was the All Blacks who played brilliantly. They were brilliant. To beat a valiant Irish side 28-24. Mate, Roger, I'll give you the first word on that one because I know you're Foster's number one fan. What did you make of that quarterfinal?
Intense. It was intense. It was one of those games that, and the All Blacks came out guns blazing. The way that the Irish finished that with 37 phases, the All Blacks began the game with something similar with 30 plus. I think it was 29 or 30, just maybe just over 30 phases as well. So it was they knew that they were going to, if they were going to try and get across the line with this game with Ireland, they needed to be patient. They needed to retain possession, and for the most part, they did. And they starved Ireland of the ball for most part of their first 10 or so minutes, I believe. So they were able to retain ball and just keep ball on in hand, and they made the best of that particular tussle with Ireland. But obviously, once Irish got the ball with Bundy Aki, it was really tough to try and keep him at bay. But it was just an awesome game to watch, keeping you on the edge of your seat, because it was sort of interesting to see how Bundy was playing and how they were able to just keep them down. But Rico Ioane being able to get into space as well, it was just a little bit frustrating to see that they were getting starved of the ball as well at times. But I believe I was really enjoying that Tyrell Lomax had come right for the scrums, and that he was able to put in a good shift despite his earlier injuries. But Aaron Smith, again, we go back to players that we probably won't see again at a Rugby World Cup, let alone in an All Black jersey. Aaron Smith, will we see Adi Savea again in an All Black jersey post this Rugby World Cup? He's got a couple of years in Japan. But I think they all played outstanding. But, you had your Adi play his typical game leading from the front, but then you had Sam Cane pull out an outstanding shift on defense and stealing ball, jackling ball, and just frustrating the opponents and pretty much flipping the bird at O'Mahony for, saying that he was the Bush version of a Richie McCaw earlier in the piece, earlier this year. So it was just satisfying to see the All Blacks be able to pull that one off, albeit a close game. And we came in as underdogs, and Ireland as the number one. And I think, to their credit, the Irish fans had every right to believe that the Irish could pull it off and win and go even further in this competition. But I mean, as I mentioned, my teams were France and the All Blacks coming into this, and I was hoping that France would be at the World Cup final and take it out in the end. But the All Blacks, sentimentally, I'd love for them to take it out, and I haven't pulled any punches of them, giving the result for Ian Foster to be able to finish off on a high and prove a lot of the naysayers wrong in terms of the All Blacks still having their aura and being able to still be considered one of the best teams in the world.
Yep, nice thoughts there. Still some issues around the discipline as well. So we talked about this in our previous pod. We talked about the amount of penalties that they conceded, and this is way back in the opening match against France. We're talking back that the game against South Africa and the warm-ups where they got yellow carded and red carded out of the game, and that's come back. It didn't bite them this time, but it's something they're going to have to fix. The 2 yellow cards, it's 20 minutes with 14 men. And if you keep going down that style, it's going to be an uphill battle. So still some discipline issues which they haven't sorted out. But mate, I'll get your thoughts on the game. What did you make of that quarterfinal? And I know one thing I want you to talk about as well, Rico Ioane. He got labelled as classless. He gestured to the crowd. He gave old mate Johnny Sexton a bit of a send-off. So your thoughts on that as well as the game, Joey?
Yeah, mate, I've seen a lot of the videos going around on TikTok and that during the moment where Rico's supposedly shows his lack of class. I think, judging by the video, you can't hear the audio, and until Rico comes on here and says, and Johnny comes on here and says what was actually said, we're just speculating, right? So I think it was just banter that was given in return to a comment that was made to Rico. I don't know what it was. Maybe Rico had said something during a handshake that got Johnny a bit offside, and he probably responded to that, and then Rico responded to that, or something more offensive maybe. So, and Rico doesn't strike me as the type of guy who will just let an older bloke talk down on him just because he's an older bloke who should be respected and is probably respected on the other side of the world. And banter, I think, has its place in the sport, and I think, those two blokes probably left it on the field, whereas the rest of us and the rest of, those fans who are butthurt by it probably want to carry it on. I, for one, love, banter. I love trolling people with banter that I know that is going to get them feeling some kind of way, because, that's just the nature of sport. Well, rugby anyway. We love throwing banter each way. And I guess a big proponent of that is George Gregan. When he made that comment, 4 more years, boys, 4 more years. Well, how do you come back from that other than coming back in 4 years and beating them? But that's 4 years, right?
Yeah.
So maybe he said something to that effect. Maybe he said something talking about his retirement. Maybe he said something to the effect of, you're an old cunt. Sit down, Who knows? But at the same time, it's done. The game's over. Anyone who was butthurt by it should just let it go. And those two blokes probably got over it. They probably had a beer together after. So, who knows? It's just one of those things. And plus, fans always blowing things out into proportion.
Classless, I don't know. I mean, you look at the haka, what are you going to say? Some people will say that the Irish fans were disrespectful for not being silent during the haka. So it's all perspective.
Exactly. It's all perspective.
Whatever.
Absolutely.
Yeah, whatever. It's just whatever's said on the field. There's a lot of banter, as you say, Joey, that happens on the field. There's a lot of niggly halfbacks that will forever just running their mouths to try and it's just part of the game, I suppose, to try and put off the opponent, the opposition. So nothing's and I still remember I was going to got a yellow card and this kid telling me all the best to going back to your factory job on a Monday, in a club game, and all these years later, and it's their number 13 for Ireland. Was it him? He was only probably 17, playing Premier Club Rugby for Karaka at the time, and passing. That was his comment. I was going, who is this kid? And he's gone on to achieve some great things, not only for the Chiefs in New Zealand rugby, but for Ireland. And I think it's a performance that he can still be proud of. But it's all part of it. Whatever happens, words is one thing. And, not everyone's going to, but I think it's just the media beat up, just taking it and just running with it and just adding fuel to the fire because the All Blacks are so disrespectful. But on the other hand, they're celebrating their win, and at the same time, it's pretty much, I don't know, what Hulk Hogan used to do, put his hand up to the ear and goes, oh, where's the noise now? Why are you silent? Where are my fans?
Yeah, just on the haka thing, watching the game live, I thought to myself, wow, it's so loud in that stadium. There's so many people that they're drowning out the haka that I can't even hear Aaron Smith calling the calls. I thought that was
you don't mind it. You don't mind it. If that's their response, all the best.
Yes.
Like when the Australians were in a huddle and George Gregan turning his back Well, some teams are allowed to respond, however. And I know that, tangata whenua as well as Kiwis would find that disrespectful. However, that's sport, and teams, they can show respect, but then they can also show disrespect to the team. If they choose to do that, then that's part of sport. And in the same token, during play, you're allowed to do the same. You can tackle someone hard and then have a bit of a standover or a bit of verbal go-to as well. So it's what helps get people on the edge. And
it's just fans, It's just fans and media blowing it out of proportion.
So long as it's Rico not doing it when he's playing for the Blues, I don't mind.
I guess the game itself, Stace, the game itself, wow.
Oh,
wow.
yeah.
It looked like at one point in the beginning stages that the All Blacks were going to run away with it. Right? It was 13-0 at one point in the early stages. 13-0 to the ABs, right?
That's right.
And it looked like, shit, they could get another try here and another try here and just put them out of their misery. No, the Irish came back, right? They came back strong. And then my other favourite part of the
Bundy's
game,
try. Bundy's
try got them back in, and it just looked.
His footwork,
it was like,
crazy,
holy
man.
heck! The man had the nerve to come back in, to cut back in, and just use his footwork and score a try, and give them hope. You could see the fans who were quiet.
Yep.
And it was quiet during those 13 points, right? It was quiet during those 13 points, and then when Bundy scored, they started getting louder and louder again. And it was good. It was cool to watch. And then you see at the end, the 37 phases with a couple of minutes to go, and then they go overtime. It's like, wow, this is such a cool nail biter. And then, to see, and I as a forward, I was like, shit, I wonder if any of our tacklers are going to have the courage to stand over the ball and try and, get a turnover. And look, who came to the rescue? It was the man himself, Sam Whitelock. I wasn't a fan of him in his early days of his career, but I've grown to become a Sam Whitelock fan. Unfortunately,
Game 151.
Unfortunately, I can't say the same for Alan Wynne-Jones, Stacey.
Very Alan Wynne-Jones like that movie did at the end there.
But I think it was a nail biter because not long after Bundy scored, then Adi Savea scored in the corner. So that sort of, then we went up to an 18-10 lead. But then on the 39th minute, just before half-time, they had a bit of a drive and a maul. And then Gibson Park, wrong foot. I think it was
Kiwi.
Can't remember who got another Kiwi scoring a try.
Kiwi. So that's but given that the All Blacks got the result, it's still an awesome thing to know that Ireland have come such a long way. Even though they haven't advanced past their previous, results, which is quarterfinal and not onto the semi. That's nothing. I still think this is the greatest Ireland team that has ever taken the field. Just because on the 17 successive victories, and they weren't easy victories either. They won a series win in New Zealand.
That's right.
They beat us a couple of times before. This is almost the third time in a row. So gladly they didn't get that one, but it could have easily have gone Ireland's way if Wayne Barnes had his way, maybe. But look, I think this World Cup has shown that the refs probably still are relying too much on the TMO or allowing the TMO to have too much involvement, as you saw in the Samoa game. Not saying anything, but that Samoa game, the try was well and truly scored and the conversion kicked and they're getting ready to go back to halfway and restart the game, but then the TMO, no one asked him. The ref didn't ask him. No touchies asked him, but he found it. He kept watching over that footage to find that knock-on, and it was a knock-on, to be fair. But the fact that they did it after that conversion.
The thing about that is I don't want to keep going. I don't want to go all the way back there, but if that Samoa one, if they got that try, then they win the game, then they finish third in the pool. Then we don't have to go through this qualifying. So imagine if Samoa don't qualify for the next World Cup. And then it comes back to I think, Rog, you mentioned it earlier on the podcast, how that's not actually You're not actually allowed to do that.
Yeah.
Right, so that's the difference between third and fourth in the pool.
True.
And the ramifications of that could be
Still,
huge.
even though they wouldn't go further in the competition, absolutely, it prevents them from playing again a whole number of tier 2 nations to try and qualify again.
Right.
And
there's
so
no guarantee as well that they're going to qualify, Whereas third's automatic qualification, fourth you've got to go through the qualification process. So that's had massive implications for Samoa. Anyway, I don't want to go all the way back there, but
yeah, big ups to Ireland for for the way they played between the last World Cup and this World Cup.
Because they got but then they, I guess you mentioned it, Stacey, earlier on, the discipline, because we got the yellow card, the Dane Cole's pulling down, and then it was a penalty try. So that's how close it came down to in the end, and how costly those 2 yellow cards could have been. The inconsistencies with the referee again was because Owen Farrell, it was Itzebeth, sorry, for South Africa, put his hand out, and that was deemed a knockback. But France, the French supporters and French team probably think that it was the other way, and that's where they questioned O'Keefe's performance, where he didn't deem that because following that, South Africa scored a try, and how much of a difference that would have made had that been called back for a deliberate knock-on penalty to France. It could have been a different sort of result. How much of a factor it would have had on the final outcome, don't know. We'll never know now. But Smith puts out a hand, marginally touches his hand. Yep, he was looking, but at the same time, Owen Farrell did the same thing, no question. But it was deemed that the ball wasn't. Sorry.
I was actually sort of okay with that call because if you remember, he passes it to the guy on the inside, and if Aaron Smith doesn't get that little touch, that guy catches it and he's through, and he's 1-on-1 with Bodie, and then who knows? He's if he gets past Bodie, then that's a try, or he gets tackled close and try scoring position. So I understand that it's sort of like one of those. It's inconsistent.
But it's inconsistent because against Fiji and England, right?
Yes.
Owen Farrell was in a similar predicament, yet they didn't give him a yellow card. It was just a penalty because they sort of they downgraded it because the ball wouldn't have travelled directly to the outside player. But there was an outside player, and still Owen Farrell is deliberately putting his hand out to disrupt the flow of the ball. And yet, his was only a penalty, not a yellow card. Itzebeth wasn't a yellow card either. Oh no, was Itzebeth a yellow card? No, it was deemed knockback.
Yeah, knockback. That's right.
Yeah,
we'll touch on a bit later, but yeah, you're right. So I was hoping that wouldn't be a major factor, but one thing that has popped up, the unconscious bias has popped up as one of those buzzwords around the referees, particularly around the Pacific nations, and now we're seeing some inconsistencies with that knock-on call with Farrell you mentioned, and also Itzebeth, which we'll probably touch on with it when we do that review.
And then you imagine, hey guys, if anything about like the reversal of that TMO call about the try and the conversion happened to any of the Six Nations teams. Holy, mate, it would go wild, go crazy, right? There would be an uproar about that kind of decision. So it happens to Samoa, England get across, they get the victory, and it's hardly anything.
Yeah.
But the John Campbell article.
I don't know if John Campbell's part Samoan or what, but he's always stuck up for our team and stuff. So
yeah, the heartbreaking game.
John Campbell.
Yeah.
All right. One thing I wanted to say, Ireland, like you touched on this before, Joey, they were on a 17-game win streak. They were number one in the world by quite a lot based on the rankings. And Fozzie, to his credit, he's knocked them out of the World Cup. So, Joey, mate, I'll get you to have a word on this. You probably haven't been as hard as Fozzie as I have. But has this result sort of changed your perspective on Fozzie as a coach? Because I know he was sort of expected to lose and get knocked out at the stage by a lot of fans and a lot of people.
That's a tough one. It's a good question. It's a tough one to answer because, in a lot of ways, I'm not a Fozzie fan, but I really respect and admire how through all the criticisms that he's getting internally and externally, more externally, of course, by the general public, by the fans, and other teams and other nations. I think he's done well to prepare his team the best way he possibly can, and allow the senior members of the team to have the kind of freedom that allows a player like Sam Cane to shine the way he did. And I think Sam Cane doesn't shine unless the heat is taken off him from a leadership perspective, where others around him, senior guys like Artie and the likes, actually step up their game in terms of leadership within the team and take on various parts of that role. Obviously, the decision-making on the field still comes down to Sam Cane, but I think his job was made easier as a captain by the senior team members around him, and that's due to, obviously, the long-standing systems that they've had in place since probably Ted's time and maybe even before that, where they've got a inner sanctum of a leadership team where the older players in the team, they lay down the law for the younger players to abide by. Obviously, a couple of days, maybe hours before the game, one of those young players or new players, Mark Telea, didn't keep to team protocol. And it wasn't even a Fozzie decision. Fozzie says it was the senior team members that made the call to stand him down. And I respect Fozzie for that, for not getting in the way of the senior players making that call. And I respect the senior players of the team, of the All Blacks, for making that call, because it had to be done. You set an example for any future players who come into the squad and potentially have it in their mind that they're going to play around. I'm not saying that Mark was playing around, but I hope she was worth it, because he lost the test cap, right? But it's like, okay, that's awesome that they've got these systems in place, and he trusts his players, and Sam was able to shine the way we've always wanted him to shine, and I have grown respect for not only Fozzie, but now Sam Cane as well. So,
yeah.
But then you think about, because when did that come out, Joey? Because prior to that knowledge, and possibly, that there was always going to be a leadership group that probably have a say, because it go back to the Kevin Mealamu days when Aaron Cruden missed his flight, and then he had to see Kevin Mealamu, who was the leader of the pack of the leadership group, and so he was the most senior at the time, and you never wanted to be told off by Kevin Mealamu back then. So I imagine that whatever the discrepancy was from Mark Telea, that this was going to be no different. But then again, social media, people again having a crack at Ian Foster. If you want to win this quarterfinal, you got to play Mark Telea regardless of what he's done. And so again, when that information comes out, obviously there's processes and protocol, and it's good that the leadership group can stay to that. If you're going to play up or breach any of the team protocols, then you're going to face the consequences. And if that means missing out on a game, so be it. Next person gets an opportunity. Albeit that I was a little bit concerned with Lester Fainga'anuku's performance, because he was getting run around by Hansen, the
Mac Hansen,
and he had some blistering pace. So that's something that we needed to sort of shore up on the left edge, on the left side of the field. So Leicester was able to, obviously make up for in other ways, but it was just that was concerning how they could easily get around our left hand side with ease. And hopefully that's something that we can sort of adjust, and they probably addressed it. If Mark Telea comes back into the fold, then we know that his defense is quite sound, but it's his attack that we definitely missed as well. And if they can go in tandem with with Will Jordan on the right wing, then we've got a winning formula. It's going to be hard to stop them for Argentina anyway. So I think we're going to be safe moving forward in this in the semi. But yeah, I think hopefully Mark Talia comes back, learns from whatever's happened. But it's awesome that even the All Blacks are willing to stand down a team member, even at the the pinnacle event.
Yeah, so Mark Talia has been named in this team to play against Argentina, so that's good.
Yeah.
There's five Blues players that are playing. I don't expect you to know that, Rod, because you're a Chiefs man. But
did you just have to?
Okay. I think the other thing that was obvious to me about Fozzie was he didn't play his son, and I'm sure he really wanted to chuck him on. His son being D-Mac. I'm sure he really wants to chuck him on.
Oh, he's got a few sons. Right? Sam Kane's one of his
that's
sons.
An interesting point.
I'm sure he really wanted to chuck him on. And, I think he was thinking about the team and thinking about what kind of value D-Mac being brought on would add to the team. I think ultimately, he didn't bring him on for one reason or another. And I think he put the team's needs first before his own, and I respect him even more for that. Because I think
I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure. I think it's a trust issue.
I think
because then you think,
maybe that too.
It reminded me of again going back to when Fitzy didn't like being taken off, subbed by Norm Hewitt, and then it reminded me of that because you got guys that are on the bench. Normally, what we're used to in the modern era now is that the bench eventually gets emptied, albeit if someone like Papali'i came on for 5 minutes. What's the impetus around that? Was it necessary? Did Kane have to be taken off? We don't know. However, he came on for 5 minutes. Christie didn't get used. D-Mac didn't get used. So I quite like that. It was quite an intense match, and trust the players that were on there. Did we need a player like D-Mac who could add a lot of impact, but at the same time it can be disruptive with the way that he plays? And so maybe that was the safer option, just to go with the players that were on the field and trust the processes. And we didn't need to trust the defense. We didn't need D-Mac to be utilised. And it's too much has been said of tests being given to players, without really needing to. They could just use the players that are on the field. If they can, sure, all these players are conditioned to play 80 minutes plus. So, but we understand that fatigue and everything else, so, you can get a lot out of another player coming on to finish off a game. So, but it was interesting to see that we didn't empty the bench against Ireland on the weekend. And it just reminded me
from Aaron Smith to Finley Christie. Even though I'm a Blues fan, I'm happy to admit that. And I wonder if he's saying the game's on the line. I don't trust Christie. I'd trust the fatigued Aaron Smith more. And it's the same with D-Mac. He's sort of he's good, but he can be a bit too rocks and diamonds sometimes. And when the game's on the line, if he's putting up rocks, that can cost you. So I'm not sure. I wonder if he just doesn't trust the guys, or it's a lack of depth or something. Because I thought that was interesting as well.
Yeah, I don't think
it works. I
don't think it's a lack of depth. I think it was just it was the pros and cons about bringing on a player in the dying minutes, or in obviously Kane was in the front line with throwing his body, so you can understand bringing in a fresher Papali'i just to get those last 5 minutes, make use of his energy and his impact in that way. D-Mac, I don't know. Could he have been anything different at the back there? But you had guys like Geordie Barrett who pulled out a match winner holding up that try. And so it was just too close a game to call. And maybe there was reasonings that probably we won't ever know. We can only speculate as to why he wasn't brought on. But it was just an interesting observation, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, what up there, Joy? I thought your point about Sam Kane's also very good, because he's been, along with Foster, them two, the captain and the coach, are the two guys who seem to copped it in the neck the most. And you think about who he was up against. He was up against Josh Vanderfleer, who's World Player of the Year last year. He was European Professional Club Player of the Year. He's the best 7 in the world. And, he got shown up. He got shown up from Kane. That was the best Kane's played for, 4 or 5 years. So,
it was a superb performance by there was just so many tackles that he threw his body in, and just like good solid tackles. But then there were solid defense tackles from everyone right across the board. Ireland struggled to break the line, but when they did really well with purpose. And then similarly with the All Blacks as well.